Hey yo, what's up my hoopers, it's your boy Crunch Time back with another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the New Orleans Pelicans, assessing how their roster is constructed and delving into why I think they could shock everyone in the 2022-2023 NBA season. But before we get into all of that, make sure to hit the like button if you want more content like this and subscribe to join the gang. We're trying to hit 100 subs by the end of August, so a subscription would be greatly appreciated. With that being said, let's jump right into the video. The first vital move that the Pelicans front office made came during last offseason. On August 7, 2021, the New Orleans Pelicans, Memphis Grizzlies, and Charlotte Hornets agreed to a three-team trade. And while yes, the Hornets were involved, the main benefactors of this trade were the Pelicans and the Grizzlies, as the two teams would basically swap centers. Additionally, the Pelicans would acquire Devontae Graham, who would prove to be a key piece, but more on that later. Ultimately, however, this trade was one of those rare occurrences where, in my opinion, both teams benefited, as Valanciunas could stretch the floor a bit more for the Pels, and Adams would become a vital rebounder for the Grizzlies, while also serving as a great pick-and-roll lob target for Ja to play off of. Several months later, the Pels made an even bigger trade, as on February 8th, at the trade deadline of the 2022 NBA season, they agreed to a blockbuster deal with the Portland Trail Blazers, which would send CJ McCollum to New Orleans for basically a couple role players and a bit of draft capital. The Pels' ability to acquire McCollum without giving up any key pieces was, in my opinion, a godsend, as they gained even more offensive and star firepower, while still remaining a pretty deep roster. CJ's effect on the team was pretty instant, as the Pelicans, who had a record of 22-32 before the trade, would go on to finish with a record of 500 throughout the last 28 games of the season, which I know 500, it's not amazing, but it's better than 22-32. Throughout these 28 games, they'd also put up 115.8 points per game, a mark that would have been good for the second highest PPG in the league after only the Timberwolves, on 49% from the field as a team, a mark that would have been good for the highest field goal percentage in the league. Finishing the regular season with a record of 36-46, the Pelicans earned themselves the 9th seed and the privilege of matching up with the 8th seeded Clippers to battle it out for the 8th seed playoff spot, which the Pelicans won. This was already accomplishment enough, but what was even more eye-opening was their series against the Phoenix Suns in the first round of the playoffs. Although the team ultimately ended up losing the series, they did put up a fight, taking the number 1 seeded Suns to 6 games, trading blows with them throughout the first 4 games before eventually running out of steam in the last 2 matchups. That brings us to today, where I think New Orleans is in a really good spot. With the promising performance of their young roster last year, there really isn't any need to make any big trades or massive roster adjustments, especially considering the fact that Zion Williamson will be making his highly anticipated return to the court in the fall, which I think, when coupled with the natural progression of the roster's young players, will be enough to push the Pelicans over the edge into serious title contention conversations. The starting lineup of Devontae Graham, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas is scary to start with, especially when you consider that before his injury, Zion was putting up a cool 27 points per game on ridiculous efficiency, all while Steven Adams was down low clogging up the paint. Given Valanciunas' ability to stretch the floor, at least a lot better than Adams did, I expect Zion to have an absolute field day in the paint and pick up right where he left off in his sophomore year. And when you add on to that the fact that Zion seems to be in even better shape now than he was pre-injury, and the prospect of his returning impact on the Pelicans becomes even more exciting. Like, Mans is doing 360 windmill dunks off of basically a standing vert after just being out with a foot injury for almost 2 years. He's legitimately a different breed.
What is that?
CJ and BI were already hooping and gelling well together without him, so Zion should only add another dimension to their offense. I think that the fit between Lonzo and Zion was also a really integral part of the Pels' offense pre-Zion injury, but although Zoe is now gone, I think that Graham can fill that playmaking role really nicely, which is why I think that it was essential that the Pelicans acquired him during that Jonas Valanciunas trade. While not being nearly the playmaker that Lonzo is, Graham functions as a really good ball handler and playmaker on this team that doesn't really have any other really good playmakers. So he should go a long way in helping to distribute the ball and making this team function smoothly. Additionally, y'all know I love a good pick and roll game, so the prospect of Graham and CJ in the pick and roll with Zion is very exciting to me. On top of this, the roster is pretty deep, and the bench showcases some really solid role players, such as the youngsters Kira Lewis Jr. and Herb Jones, the defensive menace Jose Alvarado, and Larry Nance Jr. On top of that, Pelicans fans can also look forward to seeing the 8th overall pick in this year's draft, Dyson Daniels, suit up for the squad. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I don't really know much about him, but I've heard that he's a pretty promising prospect. Well, I'll say that 3 times fast. Considering what the Pelicans showcased after the McCollum trade last year and the addition of Zion and Daniels, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say they could easily be a top 10 offense in the league, maybe even a top 5 offense in the league next season. However, it's on the other end of the court where I become a bit more, or really, honestly, very concerned. Last year, after the CJ McCollum trade, they were putting up ridiculous offensive performances. However, they only had a 500 record because of how lackluster their defense was. Overall, throughout the season, the Pelicans were pretty bad on that end, finishing with only the 20th best defensive rating in the league, which makes sense since Graham, McCollum, and Valanciunas range from being meh on defense to being downright liabilities on that end of the court. On top of that, in the little time that we got to watch Zion play, let's just say he wasn't the defensive monster that scouts and fans thought he would be. He was actually pretty bad on that end, making way too many unnecessary gambles and defensive lapses. So adding him to the lineup doesn't really address this issue, but rather could compound upon it. However, B.I.'s improvement on that end, as well as Herb Jones' excellence on defense, is promising. And I could see the Pelicans potentially running a lineup of Alvarado, B.I., Herb, Zion, and Hayes, who also shows some promising rim protection, if they want to play a more defensive brand of basketball. However, this lineup does sacrifice a lot of offensive firepower that I think will be essential to their success as a team, but even a lineup of CJ, B.I., Herb, Zion, and Valanciunas could work to maintain a high level of offense while also providing at least some respectable defense anchored around B.I. and Herb. Basically, the depth of the Pelicans roster gives them a lot of flexibility, allowing them to go with different lineups depending on what they need at the moment. So while yes, the defense is a bit concerning, and defense is essential to make it far and ultimately compete for a title in the playoffs, as we saw with teams such as the Warriors, Celtics, and Heat, the Pelicans do have the roster depth to work around that issue pretty easily in my opinion. Furthermore, this team, while being incredibly young, has now had at least some playoff experience and is being led by a vet who is a great leader and also has a lot of playoff experience in CJ McCollum. So what level of success do I think the Pelicans could have this season? Well, I think that at bare minimum, they're a 6th seed in the West, which I know seems kind of low, but that's the worst case scenario, and honestly, with how deep the Western Conference is, you could be a 6th seed and still be pretty competitive with the top 3 or 4 seeded teams. In fact, the only teams in their conference that I can say pretty confidently are better than them are the Warriors, Suns, and maybe the New Look Timberwolves, depending on how that pans out. Other than that, every other team in their conference, I believe, is either on the same level or even slightly worse than the Pelicans will be next season. Overall, they have all the makings of a great team who could potentially make a deep playoff run this season. All in all, while the Pelicans are an extremely young team and no doubt have an incredibly bright future, the return of Zion Williamson will likely put them in serious title contention this year, and this squad could ultimately end up proving that the future is here. With that being said, thank you for watching the whole video, you guys. If you made it this far, comment, I don't know, hashtag GOATZion to let me know that you made it this far. Also, let me know what you think of the Pelicans, what you think Zion will look like coming off his injury next season, and tell me how far you think the team will go in the comments down below. If you liked the video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. Don't forget, we're trying to hit 100 subs by the end of the month, so again, a subscription would be greatly appreciated. But with all that being said, it's been your boy Crunch Time, and I'll see you next time. Peace.